I died on the same night my parents handed my college fund to my sister. Not metaphorically. I collapsed, my heart stopped, and the world went dark. And the last thing I heard before the silence took me was my father's voice. He said, "Mira deserves this more. She's the one with a future worth funding." That was the night I realized I had never been a daughter to them, just a donor. But here is the part they never expected, the part that changed everything forever. I came back, eyes open, heart cold, memories sharp as a blade they handed me themselves. I remembered every lie, every manipulation, every smile that was actually a transaction. And I remembered the graduation stage, the moment they finally saw what they had lost. They stood in that crowd thinking they would see Mira shine, proud and untouchable. Instead, they saw me, standing at the top, holding everything they had stolen from me. And for the first time in my entire life, they could not look me in the eyes. This is not a story about forgiveness. This is a story about what I chose instead. If you want to know how I turned their betrayal into my greatest weapon, keep watching. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because this story only gets darker from here. I was 22 the first time I lived through graduation day, and I failed. Not because I was stupid. I had the highest GPA in my entire department. I failed because the night before, I found our family's bank statements on the floor. Every scholarship fund my grandparents left me had been quietly, carefully drained. 4 years of deposits, gone. Redirected into Mira's private university account instead. I confronted my mother and she looked at me like I was asking for something unreasonable. She said, "Mira's school costs more. You're stronger. You'll figure it out on your own." I stood there shaking, holding papers that proved my own family had robbed me silently. That night, I worked a double shift, skipped meals, and cried alone in a bathroom stall. 3 weeks later, exhaustion and a heart condition nobody bothered to diagnose killed me. But what I didn't know then, what I only learned after I came back, was the worst part. Mira knew. She had always known. And she never said a single word to stop them. I woke up gasping, 19 years old, 2 years before any of it had happened yet. My hands were shaking, but my mind was the sharpest it had ever been in my entire life. I lay in that bed, and I did not cry. I did not panic. I made a list instead. Every account number, every transfer date, every signature my mother forged using my name. This time, I said nothing at the dinner table. I smiled and I watched and I planned quietly. I opened a private bank account the next morning using my part-time job, money only. I contacted the university scholarship board and requested my grandfather's original documents. What they sent back made my blood turn completely cold inside my chest without warning. My name had been removed from the beneficiary list, replaced with Mira's, 2 years prior. Someone had done this before I even started college, before I had a single chance to fight. And the signature at the bottom of that document was not my mother's handwriting at all. It was mine, a perfect forgery. And the notary who stamped it was my father's oldest friend. I did not confront my father. I sat across from him at dinner and poured his tea instead. He smiled at me like I was still blind, still broken, still the daughter who would never know. That smile told me everything. It told me this was not about money or Mira's future at all. I hired a document analyst using 3 months of my saved wages and waited without breathing. She confirmed the forgery within a week, and then she told me something that stopped my heart. The original scholarship was not just money. It was a trust my grandfather built for me alone. It included the family property deed, a share of a company, and a life insurance beneficiary claim. Everything had been quietly transferred over 4 years before my grandfather even passed away. My parents had planned this long before I was old enough to understand what they were stealing. And the reason they chose Mira, the reason that finally broke something cold open inside me, was that Mira was not my sister by accident. She was my father's daughter from another woman. And my mother had agreed to this arrangement in exchange for keeping the family name and wealth. I was never the daughter they protected. I was the one they sacrificed to protect their secret. I moved carefully, quietly, like someone who had already died once and learned from it. I filed the forgery evidence with a legal trust attorney 3 months before graduation week. I said nothing at home. I cooked dinner. I asked about Mira's internship with a straight face. My mother glowed talking about Mira. never once noticing the storm building behind my eyes. Then the attorney delivered the news that made my father's face drain completely of all color. The trust could not be legally transferred without my living signature, which was never obtained. Every transfer, every document, every forged paper was now grounds for full criminal fraud charges. My father called me into his office that evening, trying to sound calm and in control still. He offered me money, a settlement, a quiet agreement that would make everything disappear fast. I looked at him for a long time, and then I asked him one question he was not prepared for. I said, "Did you cry at my funeral? Or were you relieved that the problem finally went away?" His silence lasted 4 full seconds, and that silence was the only answer I would ever need. The attorney called me the next morning. Mira had just hired her own lawyer overnight. Mira's lawyer sent a letter claiming she was also a victim, that she never knew, that she was innocent. I read it once, folded it slowly, and handed it directly to the fraud investigator without a word, because I had one final piece of evidence that neither Mira nor my parents ever knew existed still. My grandfather had installed a voice recorder in his study the year before he passed away, quietly. Every conversation, every negotiation, every moment they planned my erasure, captured perfectly. Mira's voice was on that recording, clear and calm, saying, "Just keep her distracted until it's done." The case went public 3 days before graduation, and our family name burned across every headline. My father's business partners withdrew. My mother's social circle vanished like smoke in cold air. Mira never walked her graduation stage. She walked into a civil court hearing instead that morning, and I walked across my stage alone, in silence, holding my degree with steady and unbothered hands. My parents sat in that audience, and for the first time they looked small, frightened, and very old. They had spent years building a future for a daughter who never once thought I was worth saving. But I had rebuilt everything they stole, and I had done it without asking them for a single thing. I did not smile at them. I did not look for them. I simply walked forward and never looked back, because the greatest revenge was never their punishment. It was my freedom from needing them at all.